So with the PTR for Diablo 4 having come and gone, I think it's pretty safe to say that the overhauls coming with Season 4 have been a massive success. But I do think there's one area of these overhauls that's going to prove to be an issue. And this issue revolving around unique items. But first you have to understand what is actually going to be affecting these uniques and why this may become a massive issue in the future of Diablo 4. Now first you have to understand what's actually going to be affecting these uniques, because one of the biggest changes coming with all these overhauls is the itemization overhaul and the big change to affixes. Now affixes are getting a complete overhaul. Tons have been removed, some have been added in. Most of what you're going to be finding on gear are going to be much more simple. All the conditional affixes have been removed, but one of the biggest changes and one of the changes that's going to be affecting uniques is the massive increase to affixes on rare and legendary items. And we actually got a direct comparison of before Season 4 and after Season 4. So we got to look at a legendary wand, and before Season 4, the intelligence roll would be between 38 and 52. But with these Season 4 changes, the intelligence roll on the exact same wand would be 70 to 84. So a massive increase in the power of singular affixes. But legendary items are only going to have 3 total affix rolls instead of 4 before Season 4. But legendary items are only going to have 3 affixes after these changes. But again, all of these affixes are going to be significantly stronger than they were previous to Season 4. But then on legendary items, you're also going to be able to add 2 new tempering affixes from the new tempering crafting system. These tempering affixes also being some of the strongest and most unique affixes in the game. So now in Season 4, you'll have 3 much stronger affixes, then you'll be able to add 2 more incredibly strong tempered affixes for a total of 5 affixes. So legendary items in general are going to be much stronger than they were previous to Season 4, and you're just going to have a lot more control over the strength of those items. But it's a completely different story when we go to unique items, because unique items basically haven't gotten any changes. Unique items, whether it be in Season 3 or Season 4, are still going to be rolling with 4 affixes, and almost all of them are going to be rolling with the same affixes that they have always rolled with. And this is also probably because a lot of uniques do also have unique stats to that item, to where you couldn't get that affix on that slot, or you couldn't get that affix on any other items in the game. So still rolling with 4 affixes makes sense, but the affixes on uniques have not been increased like the affixes on legendary items have been increased. And like we went over, even though legendary items are only going to have 3 affixes, they're going to be much stronger, and then you could put 2 more tempering affixes on top of that. So legendary items are generally going to be much stronger, but uniques, you only get 4 affixes. The affixes on the unique items still have the same roll range as legendary items from Season 3, but you also can't put any tempered affixes on unique items. So uniques are just going to stay with 4 affixes. But if you get a legendary item, then you do all the crafting on it. A legendary item is going to have more affixes than a unique. All of those affixes are also going to be stronger, and because of tempering, you're able to put much stronger affixes in general on them, and you have some control over those rolls. And legendary items are still going to have their legendary aspects on them, which are kind of the counterpart to the unique special effects, which is now the absolute main reason you'd actually be using a unique. Now I do understand some of this, because uniques are generally designed around their unique effect, and a lot of the effects on these unique items are built around allowing builds to actually exist. Like there are tons of builds to where you need a specific unique item for the build to even be possible, and that makes complete sense for some of the uniques, but all uniques aren't like that. Some uniques prior to Season 4 could just give you a lot of a power, whether it be an effect that procs that gives you a massive multiplicative damage increase, or just the stats on that unique being incredibly good. But as we've gone over, the affixes are going to be much weaker than legendary items going into Season 4. So this means that if you were using a unique item in Season 3 or prior to that, strictly because it that gave you a bunch of additional power and didn't give you effects that enable your build, now that unique is actually gonna be much weaker, so that unique may not be something you wanna be using. And this issue is also compounded because Diablo 4 has pretty much always had the issue that you don't have enough slots for all of the legendary aspects you want and all of the unique items you want, because there's so many different legendary aspects now, and there's a bunch of different uniques with effects that could work with your build, that it usually feels like you could create a ton of new and interesting builds if we just had like 1 or 2 additional slots for either unique powers or legendary aspects. And because legendary items are generally gonna be just stronger than uniques with Season 4, I think a lot of builds are actually gonna be using less uniques. If this isn't changed going into Season 4 and onward, I would expect most builds to probably only be using the uniques that they absolutely have to use. Like if you're running a Hurricane Boulder Druid, you need the unique item that actually facilitates that to exist. But if there's any items that are only power based, you're probably not going to be using those. So I do think this is going to be a major issue going into the future, and I think it's going to start to compound itself even more as we continue to get more legendary aspects and as people continue to play and get much more optimized items, because we also have greater affixes. So as you continue to get legendary items with more greater affixes, being the legendary items are stronger in general in a pure power sense, that you'll probably see people even using less and less uniques as you continue to gear even more. But I do think there's a handful of ways that they could very easily fix this issue, or at least not allow it to get to a really bad state. The first being the most likely and the easiest change, and that's just to scale up all of the affixes as you scaled up the affixes on legendary items. As we went over with the direct comparison of unique wands, going from a roll of 38 to 52, and that being upped to a roll of 70 to 84, so a massive affix increase, you could just do that on all of the legendary items. And we actually have a direct comparison with this, because we have the one-handed scythe called Black River. The reason this is a direct comparison is because this also has an intelligence roll, and at the same item level, it has the same intelligence roll as a legendary item from Season 3 or previous. So that wand that we were comparing, that has the same exact intelligence roll, 38 to 52, that Black River will still have in Season 4. So all you would really need to do is buff the affixes on the unique. So instead of having a 38 to 52 on this Black River, it would go up to a 70 to 84. Now that would make unique items pretty strong because they have 4 affixes, but keep in mind, legendary items are pretty much always going to have 5 affixes because you're going to put 2 tempering affixes on them when you're actually using them. So just upping the affixes to what they would be on legendary items is the easiest way, but if they didn't want to do that, they could just allow you to add 1 or 2 tempering affixes to unique items, because if they don't increase the affixes on it, allowing you to add these tempering affixes would just keep them more in line with the power of legendary items. And this could also give you a bit more control over all of your items in general, because you'd still have some customization with unique items. Now with that being said, I do think the design philosophy around unique items is that you really can't directly impact them too much. So if I would have to guess, if this is an issue that they're going to try to fix sometime in the near future, they would probably just buff up the affixes, because that would put them in the exact same point they were previous to Season 4. And I do think that's probably the change they should do. So hopefully this is something the developers are looking into, because as I mentioned, I think this is definitely going to be an issue in the future if it isn't changed. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.